We are here to review the FY18 budget of the Public Works Department as it referenced in dockets 0536 through 0538. Orders for the fiscal year 18 operating budget, including annual appropriations for departmental operations, annual appropriation for the school department, and appropriation for other post-employment benefits, and dockets 0539 through 0543, capital budget appropriations, including load orders and lease and purchase agreements. I'd like to remind folks that this is a public hearing. It is both being broadcast live and recorded on Comcast Channel 8 and RCN Channel 82. I'd ask everyone in the chamber to silence any electronic devices. There is a presentation by Public Works Department, questions and answers from my colleagues. At the conclusion of that, we will take public testimony. There are sheets to sign in on to my left. Please state your name, any affiliation, and residence. I'd like to introduce my colleagues in order of their arrival. To my left, District City Councilor Tim McCarthy, and to my right, District City Councilor Josh Zakem. And without any further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Chris Osgood and your team.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Chairman Siomo, Councilor McCarthy, Councilor Zakem. My colleagues and I are delighted to be able to present to you the FY18 proposed Public Works budget. On behalf of the mayor, I'll offer some brief introductory remarks and then turn it over to you for questions and comments. Great. I want to point out that I'm joined by a number of members of the Public Works senior leadership team. Bill Coughlin, who leads Central Fleet Maintenance, Deputy Commissioner Mike Brohl, who leads our operations work, and Carboni, our budget director, Parajaya Singh, who leads our engineering division. We're also joined by a number of the fantastic women and men from the Public Works Department who do a terrific job every single day of delivering on our streets for the people of Boston. The people of Boston are really expecting us to do three things: deliver exceptional city services, build great streets, and support other departments in doing the same. This budget invests in exactly those things. Our operations are really led by Mike Brohl, everything from street sweeping and snow plowing to fixing street lights and ensuring that we're picking up recycling and trash in a timely manner. This year, we've already filled about 8,000 potholes, fixed or removed about 1,000 instances of graffiti, picked up about 200,000 tons of yard waste, recyclables, and trash on our streets, fixed thousands of broken streetlights, retrofitted thousands more with LEDs, and done both targeted street cleaning efforts as well as citywide efforts supported by our highway division, our code enforcement division. This budget's really helping us build on exactly that success. We are taking savings, for example, by eliminating long-term vacancies and redirecting that to actually ensure that we have 10 Hokies, going from 4 Hokies to 10 Hokies. Those 6 new Hokies will ensure that we have in every single Public Works district yard a full-time year-round Hokie, which will make a big difference in our neighborhood Main Street districts and our neighborhoods in general. We're also investing in a pair of new street sweepers. This will not only help us improve the cleanliness of our streets, but it'll also reduce our reliance on contracted street sweeping, which over time will actually save the city money. And building on some of the good work that was done by our snow team this past winter and the work that they did to remove snow from bike lanes across the city, we'll be investing in some new pieces of equipment or a new piece of equipment which will ensure that the protected bike lanes that PAR's team is building will be able to be swept during the warm months and plowed after snowstorms in the cold months. On the capital budget side, which is about a $49 million capital budget this coming year, we've had a number of terrific successes already. We've resurfaced about 29 lane miles of roadway in our city, rebuilt hundreds of thousands of square feet of sidewalks, built about 700 pedestrian ramps in our city, bringing them up to compliance. In addition to that, we broke ground on ComAv Phase 2A, cut the ribbon on places like Upham's Corner and Mattapan Square, and some new work at Walter and Bussey in Roslindale. And we've looked at some of the policies and processes we have as a department to figure out ways that we can do all of this work more efficiently and ensure that work sites are more safe. That includes rewriting things like our annual resurfacing contracts to include some performance-based contracting efforts, piloting some new ways of doing pavement preservation work in our neighborhoods, as well as doing some work on our permitting side to really reinforce OSHA's worksite safety rules. Again, all of that was with the support of the City Council. Now, this upcoming capital budget, again, is investing in those things that we've heard from our residents that they most want. In the Go Boston 2030 process, which was the mayor's long-term mobility plan, we heard loud and clear from our residents that the number one thing that they want us to be investing in as we rebuild and redesign our streets are great main streets to anchor our neighborhoods. That is why in this budget, we're going to be doing things like investing in breaking ground in Hyde Square and Jamaica Plain, North Square in the North End, Audubon Circle in the Fenway. We'll be able to cut the ribbon on Central Square in East Boston, and a number of other things which over time are going to allow us to really make those investments our residents most want. We also heard loud and clear from our residents that key corridors across our city should be really made better for folks who are walking, who are biking, who are taking transit, and who are driving. So there's a set of capital projects in here, both on the construction side and the design side, that allow us to really reimagine some of those key corridors in our city. So there's funding to be able to extend the work we started on ComAv and take that all the way out to Kelton Street in Brighton, work to be able to do redesign of Sullivan Square and Rutherford Ave, and for us to bid and then break ground on the North Washington Street Bridge project, all of which will really help people get from Charlestown to downtown and vice versa. This budget also really invests in a set of things that are done in parallel with other divisions and departments in the administration, particularly on the housing side. So our housing entity under Chief Sheila Dillon is investing in places like the Whittier Street development. This budget is really reinforcing those developments by investing in Ruggles Street and Whittier Street and the streets around Madison Park. All of those things are making sure that as we build great neighborhoods, we're also building those great streets to underpin it. And above all else, this budget, as always, sort of focuses in those basics that residents most want. Things like streetlights that are working, sidewalks that are in state of good repair, roadways that are smooth and recently redone, and bridges that are also in a state of good repair. So this capital budget and this operating budget, I think, really reflects the interests of our residents. We were delighted to be able to put it together, delighted by the support that we've had from you in past years, and look forward to your guidance and to this discussion.
Great. Well, thank you. And I join in your enthusiasm for your staff. You have great staff. You have the A team up here. I would just want to give my local district yard a shout out because they're extremely hardworking and dedicated to, maintaining the infrastructure as well as the cleanliness of our streets. And glad to see the Hokies. If Sal Lamattina was here, he'd be, doing handstands. Loves the Hokies, and they are really important for our business districts in particular. Chris, I'd like to just kind of go through the budget line by line. You're seeing a slight increase in the overall budget, 2.18, and I'm looking at the streetlights and signals is the biggest increase, 7.47. Could you give us a little more detail, and does that have anything to do with, you took on signals, I believe, the last couple of years, maybe?
Yep. Yeah. So most of what you're seeing, there's two increases which are largely driven by sort of changes in utility costs or changes in sort of the CPI. One of those is within the utility line for street lighting. So what we're seeing, and can certainly elaborate, is an increase in what we expect to pay for things like utilities on the street lighting side. Similarly, we're looking at an escalation in both the hauling and disposal of recyclables and trash, and that is, again, sort of from contracts and from sort of a CPI inflation measure that's in them.
Okay. Speaking of the street lighting part of that, and, I know we've undertaken the conversion to LEDs. Can you give us kind of a status of where we're at citywide, I guess?
Sure. We have about 67,000 streetlights in the city of Boston, of which 3,000 are gas. The remaining are electric streetlights. Of those 64,000, about 50,000 of them have already been retrofit by our calculations. We did in calendar year 2016 around 3,000 of them and we have inventory to be able to continue that work through the course of this year.
Okay. And could you speak to a little bit about staffing levels? You know, it's a labor-intensive department, like many of our departments, but especially Public Works. And I know that you're seemingly doing more with less, but if you could touch on that a little bit, I'd appreciate it. And before you begin, I just want to recognize that we've been joined by Counselor Matt O'Malley.
Yeah. I appreciate the question about staffing levels. It is very impressive what my colleagues do every single day to make sure that all 850 miles of streets are well built and well maintained. The actual sort of expected or recommended headcount in this budget is 388 positions. That does include the 6 additional Hokies that would be added. That 388 is sort of the recommended headcount. We would expect sort of the actual projected staffing level to be around 336, sort of just because of the attrition and turnover that we see.
Right. And snow budget this year, I know, I'd like to think we're out of the snow season at this point.
Yep.
What are your latest numbers on the snow budget?
Sure. So lots of credit to the person to my left. Our budget was around $22.5 million for this fiscal year. We're a little bit over that. I think we're looking at around 23.5 or in that range. Given that we had about 4 more inches of snow this year, we came in at around 47 inches of snow for this calendar year. That's sort of to be expected.
Great. All right, let me now recognize my colleague, Councilor Tim McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome everybody. It's traditional that we give out our shout outs, so I better get them out of the way. Steve Tankel, Mark Cardarelli, and Eric Prentice, I basically call on a weekly basis, and they're unbelievable. Returning emails at 11 o'clock at night, and just they're the best. And then also the boots on the ground people, you know, Vinny Provenzano and Freddie Mycroft, 2 of the best guys. Again, when 311s go in, they just seem to get fixed in a hurry, and legitimately fixed. You know, I mean, they do a phenomenal job. So I just wanted to thank them on that. I just have a couple quick questions. I know that we had talked last year, the year before, on line 311000, the tow services. We've talked about buying a large tow truck. Is there any so we're spending money? These are towing the big rigs, I'm guessing. So if we're spending big money why wouldn't we just buy a rig at some point in time?
It's a great question, and one which we've been looking at internally and are in conversations with our budget office around the right way to efficiently provide those services.
Because with the other departments needing it, we could probably debit it out anyway.
Yep.
I'll come back to power, my friend. I've noticed that the Dana, maybe I missed it, the Dana Ave Bridge is not on the budget anymore. It was last year, but it's no longer.
Council, we are working on the design part of that bridge this year, and hope to secure construction funds through the next construction season.
So next construction means you mean 2018?
2018, hopefully towards the second half of the construction.
Okay.
So it might be more appropriate for FY19 funds. And if we start early, we can use some of our bridge repairs money. So.
Okay, great. Only because the Neponset River Coalition and that group that I work with very closely, they were updated last year that it was going to get done this year. So I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So we're looking at 2018. Okay. And last, I've talked about this for a couple of years now, and I don't know where we're at it, but I know that we've talked about bobcats in the yards.
Yep.
Simply because I know that you get the calls, the 311 calls, just like we do. But and I know it's not our property, a lot of these things. But you know, when I was on that side of the desk, I used to say the same thing. If it's an MBTA bridge and it's not plowed and somebody goes off the sidewalk and gets hurt really badly, we can't say it's not our sidewalk. It's somebody's. It's, you know, we have to. So I've always thought that if we had bobcats in each yard with the different utilities, whether it's a bombardier on the front, they have the sweepers, they've got the blade, they've got. I mean, it's really the Swiss Army knife of trucks, right? Is there any thought of bringing that back possibly?
So we have. This past year, we purchased 2 Bobcats. One's been used for the Vision Zero bike lane work, but we have purchased a second one that will be utilized for projects like this. We have been using contractors because of that. late in a snowstorm, we'll usually add a few Bobcats depending on the type of neighborhood. I'm sorry, Councilor Zakem's, yours in particular with the small streets. Some of those small little private ways that we still have to access because of trash and recycling. Each year we are looking to add a Bobcat. They're around 50,000, Billy, in that ballpark, $50,000 each. So it's not a massive amount of money. It's utilizing it year round. Actually, right now our construction team, Jamie Clemente, Hector Mejias, and Mike Manning, are utilizing that piece of equipment to move gravel, to help with cave-ins, some larger jobs. So we are seeing year-round use for them. So no, it is something that we're looking for to add everywhere. But we do, to your point, in snow, add them now because of that work, that small work, if you will.
Yeah, because I remember the old snow contracts, we had some Bobcats and we had 4x4s that were.
And so, I'm sorry, that's actually back in the contract now.
Oh, good. The
And
4x4.
we, yep,
Yeah.
and we
They make a
actually
lot of
utilize them.
sense because the small corners, you and I have talked about the small corners, the small streets, even the even the smaller trucks with the beds can't get in there. So
They
that's
use,
good stuff.
they utilized in that contract.
Okay, great. That's it for me.
Thank you. We've since been joined by Counselor at Large Anise Sabi George. Counselor Zakem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here and your team up there in the gallery. It certainly it makes our job a lot easier that you have such a great crew there to respond, not just to 311s from constituents, but obviously when we do have issues. So I want to commend you and the entire Public Works staff on that. It's certainly been a pleasure to work with you all the last few years. I have a couple questions, some of which I've discussed with some members of your team in the past, some I have not. One that actually came up today, this afternoon, I was with a group of seniors in Mission Hill along Huntington Avenue, and they had some concerns about a broken up pavement around the E-line train track, the streetcar, the green line on Huntington Avenue. Now, there's some confusion of whether that's the T's responsibility or ours, but as Councilor McCarthy said, someone falls and breaks their ankle. A lot of the folks, it's a large senior population there, some limited mobility already. If we just get an answer on who was, and this is not meant as a criticism, I just learned about this a couple hours ago, but wanted to put that out there. If anyone knows the answer now, that'd be great. If not,
It's in the rail median, sort of
Yes,
like.
Council, it's a joint responsibility between the MBTA and the City of Boston. Sadly, this issue has come up in the past, but we will work with the MBTA because they have concerns about us doing any resurfacing work within their tracks and their tracks to be dislodged. But we will continue to work with them to make sure that this area is safe so that the citizens of Boston.
yeah,
can benefit.
if we could take a look at that, and if it's outside the track area, I know that would be very helpful. And then also Mike, we've discussed a little bit about street cleaning and towing recently, in particular along Charles Street in Beacon Hill. Could you explain maybe briefly how that works? I know it's a joint between your department, BTD, sometimes BPD. When there is street cleaning day, when there's towing, ticketing, how does that work, and how do we determine if there's just ticketing or towing
Sure.
or both?
Sure. So Charles is an overnight sweeping, 2 a.m. to 7 a.m., I believe. Public Works handles the actual cleaning piece, the contracted sweeping program. The towing goes through BPD. They have, in years past, utilized primarily one vendor. That vendor went out of business. They sold their property in Brighton, I want to say November, Stadium Automotive. So now I think, and I don't want to speak too much on BPD's piece, but I can kind of give you the, each precinct, if you will, police will utilize their tow contract off of their vendor list. Overnight towing has never been as robust as daytime towing. It's been less intrusive. It's on major thoroughfares. The numbers have never truly been where we'd like to see them, so we can get to the curb. Our overnight supervisor now is a gentleman by the name of Jamie Clemente, who's married himself to Charles Street, and he reports back now each night of sweeping of how many cars are tagged and how many may or may not have been towed. So it's something that Public Works would love to own more of that responsibility, just to have the ownership of getting to the curb. As of right now, and I think it goes back over 10 years that the overnight towing has always been with the police.
Is that so? It's only overnight, because I know in my neighborhood, the daytime towing, it's BTD.
I'm sorry, yeah, so
that's out
I'll
there.
explain that piece. I apologize. So daytime towing goes through BTD in the south end, tagged by BTD enforcement officers citywide. Now that excludes our Public Works District 6 and 8 Hyde Park in West Ross, which has no posted program. But that tow line is basically, it's still a police tow line during the day, but it's managed more so by our folks. So I believe we have 15 tow vendors right now. Those are all procured through Public Works.
Okay.
But each car has to be cleared for any type of accidents or criminal activity that it may have been in. So that process, while it goes through the police department tow line, it's managed out of our shop. So you can think of it, daytime towing managed by us, including up into sweeping. Nighttime is managed entirely by police.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you. And then my last question, I think for now, is on Back Street in Back Bay. You know, it's a private way, and we don't have authority or responsibility for that, I guess, in the city. But is there a preferred process or practice for residents who, if they do choose to together, as a condo association or as neighbors, pay to fix potholes or resurface, that sort of thing? Is that a preferred to coordinate with your department, or?
I defer to Power in the PIC process. I think
Again, Councillor Back Bay, that same street has had the same conversation in the past. What we have encouraged them to do is use their private resources as a private venture. They can always seek our guidance as to what might be the most effective way to do the repair work. But since it is a private street, we have limited oversight because it could get us into an awkward.
So if they just want to pave it,
Right.
though, they can
They
just.
most certainly
They don't
can.
need a special. They don't
No,
need a
sir.
permit from you
Nope.
or anything.
It's private property.
That's great. I'll just finish up by saying I want to again thank you all for your work, and particular code enforcement and Eric Prentice in your office have been always incredibly helpful and prompt on answering things, and having this opportunity to elucidate a little deeper information on some of them has been helpful. So thank you all.
Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will begin also by echoing the sentiments that have been said. Para and Chris, Mike, Bill, thank you guys. You guys are among the most responsive employees in this city. Mike Broll's stepping up to cover more with our former commissioner leaving, and he's just, if I text him at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night, I'll get a response by 11:01. Similarly, some of the folks who are with us today, of course, Eric Prentice, Mark Cardinale, Steve Tankel, and in District 6 specifically, Freddie Mycroft and A.J. Allen, the best. I reach out to these guys, and it's done, it's addressed. You guys are among the hardest workers in this city, and I've been so proud to see the DPW gets better and better every year, and you guys all deserve a credit, particularly those who are here and those that are actually out working right now as we're in this hearing, so thank you for that. A couple of pieces just wanted to check in on. One being, it was alluded to a little bit earlier, but is it BTD or is it code enforcement that gives tickets if cars aren't moved during street cleaning days?
That'd be BTD.
That'd be DTD.
BTD.
Okay, so I'll save that for Thursday or Wednesday when that is. All right,
Wednesday.
that'll be on my list. Power, can you talk a little bit about what's happening in Hyde Square that we're very excited about?
That the construction work should be starting sometime very soon, and we are all very excited. So hopefully we can celebrate that moment appropriately. So we'll be in touch with the appropriate people, council, to arrange for possible groundbreaking.
And there's going to be some public art there as well?
Absolutely. As part of the design process, we allocated resources from our program, 10% of it for the purpose of public art. And I believe that process also is moving fairly well.
Fantastic. And where are we with the, I know Councilor McCarthy and I have been working with you all and others on the improvements to Bussey Street and South Street near the Arnold Arboretum, or actually cuts right through the Arnold Arboretum. Where are we with sort of that?
So that thing is about 2 weeks from being processed. The last meeting which we had with the community, there was some feedback that we received. So we have updated our design work. We have given that feedback to the community. And I believe within the next 2 weeks, we will be tasking the contractors to do that work.
Oh, so it'll get started, because the money's there, it's been allocated,
I
so
believe so.
the construction could start as
Yes.
recently as
Within the
middle of
next
June.
month, let me,
Fantastic.
within the next month or so.
Fantastic. And are the white whale I've been chasing for years, the stairs at Lawn Street between Lawn and Heath Street, I know there was some issue with that, Chris or Mike. Any news to report on where we are?
That is the Hayden Street stairs.
Yes, correct.
Good news again, Councillor.
We found a vendor?
we found a vendor. And so that work also should be starting fairly soon. We are in the process of processing the contract, the construction, the paperwork through city. And we hope to start that work in the very near future and finish it before September.
So just so my colleagues and those that may not be up to date on this, we call them the Lawn Street or the Hayden Street stairs have been closed since 1987. They're in terrible repair. It was originally District 8. During redistricting, I picked it up. It's the back of the hill. And through good fortune and pluck and hard work, we were able to successfully get the funding for the stairs to be repaired. Because of the size and the scope and the difficulty of it, when we put it out to bid, we could not get a vendor to do it, which almost never happens. But luckily,
We persevered.
we persevered. So well done. Mr. Chair, I wish every budget hearing were like this one. So I'm going to end on that note. Thank you all. Again, thank you all. You guys do tremendous work. A real credit to our city.
Councilor Asabi George.
Our hearing with the Parks Department, we learned about, and over the course of a few hearings, we learned about the Health Commission's relationship with parks in safe needle disposal. So I'm curious, given the frequency and the role that Public Works plays in disposing of trash and waste, have you pursued any relationship or any training with the Health Commission on proper needle disposal?
Most certainly, yeah. So we started this conversation about 3 or 4 years back. We were responding to a lot of sites, Melania Cass and Mass Ave, anywhere, including even, Big Bellies in the South End, places just that had a high frequency of. We talked to, I think then Dr. Ferreira, and they set up a process. We now partner with them. Any case that comes in, anytime our folks see it, we first report it. The turnaround time from BPHC is impressive. We try not to have our folks handle it as of right now. It's a safety hazard, but there are times when we have to. We have to handle them in such a way. But BPHC has been astounding in how quickly they're able to help us out and let us clean that property, empty that litter basket. We've even found them in some of our residential trash. You put out your trash can, and unfortunately, they can end up there as well. So we've partnered and shared a lot of communication that's open 24/7.
So, and then what about the actual trash disposal? I mean, there has to be a change in practice in how you're emptying barrels and.
It would stop. So if it was seen, it would stop. We would call BPHC. They respond. Their shops team handles it, and then the barrels collected back en route. So it isn't left. It's just gotten to it a safe manner.
And then is there a turnaround time on that? Because one of the things that I've advocated for through this budget process and through a hearing that Councilor McCarthy and Councilor Baker and I co-sponsored was to increase the size of the Sharps team, because right now Health Commission only has 2 folks that come out to do the Sharps. And we discovered over the course of our hearing that there were 20,000 improperly disposed Sharps across the city over a 12-month period. So I can't, walk me through the process of one of your employees
Sure.
finds an improperly, walk me through that process.
So that would get radioed into our ops center. Our ops center would call 311. The mayor's office of 311 would reach out to, most likely via a case creation and a phone call, to engage the Sharps team. Sharp teams would respond. 311 would notify again in a new case being opened up for that litter basket or residential trash for that proper collection.
So is your employee waiting for the
No,
Sharps team, or they've moved on to something else?
We've moved on. The case comes back in. We respond back to that as of right now. Yeah.
Is it worth perhaps exploring training your staff the same way Parks has been trained to pick up and remove?
Yeah,
improperly
most certainly. I mean, I think we have
disposed?
to talk that through labor potentially as
Yeah.
well. But
Yep.
as long as labor was involved, I think that would be.
Parks has had some great success negotiating. That's just because of our ball fields
Sure.
and where we're finding a lot of kids in our playgrounds are, they're improperly discarded needles that we just need to get them
Yeah. It's
off the fields. Still documented, whether it's through
and
111.
safely, of course, right?
Right, of
Yeah.
course. And during that hearing, a member of the state's labor relations board or somebody from the state level came in just to talk about sort of the risks to employees and certainly wanting appropriate training and appropriate protocols outlined for employees for safe removal. But it is something that I think as a city, we just need to be able to deal with in a quick manner. And I don't think with just 2 folks on the Mobile Sharps team, we can handle that. So you're also not dealing with any of the waste then, the hazardous waste for the needles? That's all being,
Yeah,
that's all being disposed by?
yeah.
Excellent. And sort of connected, I'm excited that you guys are expanding the Hokey program. I think that through the years has been incredibly successful and well-received by our neighborhoods. But for your targets in the budget, your average personnel hours on the Hokey route are remaining the same. So I'm just wondering if we should
So-
be increasing that number?
Yeah,
or-
so that obviously would increase. I'm sorry that it wasn't updated. Those numbers were given for what we have done. With the given four bodies we have currently full-time, as well as the seasonals that will serve some of that purpose. That number would change with the 6 additional, given the budget approval.
Great. No, and I do think it's incredible that we're able to add that. So we'll look for an updated number on the target. I'll save my questions for the next round, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask a couple of follow-ups. Chris, you mentioned ComAv 2A is underway. Could you give a little bit of a status update?
Councillor, that project is managed by the Mass Department of Transportation, and I believe they are on track to proceed. I can give you a more detailed response later if that is okay.
Okay.
And some of those core components, as you know, are to be able to actually improve things like cyclist safety, pedestrian safety, and improve the overall public realm as one progresses from BU towards Packard's Corner.
Right.
That's exactly the sort of thing which we're looking at and Parr's team is doing as we look at phase 3 and 4, which takes you from Packard's Corner
Right.
to Harvard Ave and then beyond.
And our neighborhood is anticipating that with a lot of enthusiasm, as you can imagine. That's a very busy intersection, taking that left onto ComAv. There's a lot of opportunities, as you all have witnessed, and I know, Par, I want to give you kudos for all the work you've done to engineer that, to work with Zach. I want to give a shout out to Zach, too, who's done great work.
Yep.
I want to thank Mike, too. Where it looks like it's going to happen this construction season, the tree pits pouring of that
Yes.
synthetic material in Austin Village. And I just want to thank you personally, because we were able to work with Parks, and it's kind of a multi-departmental effort, and, it wasn't all that easy to get there, but to be able to turn it around this quickly took a lot of your time, and I want to thank you for that. And speaking of ComAv 3 and 4, are we getting the funds? We did ComAv 5, 3 or 4 years ago, and this is that stretch that remains.
So that project ComAv 3-4 was ranked very highly amongst all the projects within the regional MPO. As always, there are more needs than the monies that are there. What we are trying to do is keep our design under a very aggressive schedule, so that should money appear within the next 2 years or later, that this project will be ready to compete for any monies that are there right now. Because it is a fiscally constrained program, this project has to compete others. But we hope to do our part by having the design completed, so that way we can compete for any monies that are there in FY20 or thereabouts.
Right. And is it FY20 when phase 2A is supposed to be completed?
It should be done, I think, a little bit earlier than that, or thereabouts. Some of the landscaping plantings might take a little bit longer.
But
so
the major infrastructure
Exactly.
improvements, great. Great. Councilor McCarthy?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was actually going to ask about that tree pit stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, no, but I've got other stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just a couple things. I know that Bill had reached out to Madison Park, and I just want to
Yes.
congratulate you on that relationship that you have with them. We sit here, BPS hearing after BPS hearing, and talk about vocational tech. And I know that we all have a passion to make sure that everybody has an option, and not everybody wants to go to college. And this is just another opportunity. And for those who are just, can you actually talk a little bit about it, just because there are some people watching?
Currently, we have an intern program with them, and into the body shop application. The students are coming in their last year, the senior year. They spend 35 hours a week for minimum 6 weeks to see if they were going to go, forward with the business or if they're going to go on somewhere else. The ones that don't seem to fit in the business, we've gotten their CDL for them. They've ended up moving on to highways, so they actually still end up being employed upon graduation. And for next year, we're looking to get interns to do in-house detailing, and those will be from the special needs course. And again, 6 weeks revolving door, just to give them a feel of working.
Yeah, it's just the soft skills that they're learning, never mind the hard skills that they're learning, are just it's over the top. When I heard about that program, I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. Congratulations, that's really something unbelievable. Crosswalk material. I know we've talked about it before. That the wagon wheel, it doesn't work. I mean, it wears out right in the middle, and we keep putting it down. I know it's expensive to replace. Have we looked into other things? I know that Salem has put down for a hot top that has like a plastic base to it. That seems to be holding up well. I just feel like we're doing the same thing over and over, and the only wagon wheel crosswalk that seems to last is the one in the Horseshoe, because there's only a handful of cars go over it every day. But Melnia Cass, all of those are wiped out. The T did the entire section in Council Zacum's area of Mission Hill, and already you can just see the traffic lines running over there. Are we looking into other material?
So as part of the sort of BTD capital budget is a significant investment to get all of our crosswalks, our lane markings, our bike lanes into a state of good repair over a series of years. As we go into that more intensive investment, it's the optimal time to actually be able to do exactly what you're saying. What's the right material for us to be laying down, particularly on our high traffic bus route, truck route corridors, so that it actually lasts well over time? And how do we design stuff which ensures that we actually are getting really increasing pedestrian safety and sort of answering some of those placemaking interests that that Main Street districts in particular want? So now's the right time for us to be able to sort of dive into figure out how to answer that question.
Right. Thanks very much. And last would be Councilor O'Malley brought up a private. Well, no, I think it was Councilor Zager brought up a private way. Just a quick one. I may talk to you offline. Daisy Street in High Park. It's a private way, but we plow it. But I think this year we got the blade down a little bit too far, and we basically pushed all of their gravel kind of to the end, and now it's like Daisy Pond. So I've got a lot of people calling me like, can you help us out here? So, and I know we don't really have a lot of jurisdiction to touch it up, but we could help them out at all. That'd be awesome. Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Counselor O'Malley.
Is helpful, and we actually offer more dates for pickup. However, and this isn't everywhere, but certainly it affects some of us, the once a month pickup in the summertime, I will get 30 phone calls this summer without fail, and the first month, and then the next month I'll get the other 30. I understand, you've explained this to me before, but is there a way we can maybe refigure the schedule some way so that we stay with the same budget, but maybe move the weeks around so they can at least be 2-week weekend summer pickups? I get it. In years past, it was picked up, the yard waste, and just thrown away, and that we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that it's recycled. We want to make sure that it's composted. However, the fact of the matter is it gets very hot in the summer. There's rain, and particularly in Councilor McCarthy's district and mine, there's only once a week pickup. It can smell. It can cause issues. So you'll be batting 1,000 tonight if you can tell me we can add a couple more pickup dates in the summertime.
So maybe we won't bat 1,000, but for next year we might be able to bat 1,000. So it's credit to Rob DeRosa, Brian Kaufman, and Jerry Gorman for just adding these weeks.
Absolutely.
And I think, and you noted talking about it before, the willpower to leave it when it's on the off week. It helps with that, overall diversion rate. I think with the additional weeks the past 2 years, it's shown a huge effect. I think every year we tweak it a little bit. If you notice, as with our household hazardous waste events, we move those around a little bit. We try to move it with the feedback, and we'll certainly take that into consideration. And who knows if that number that comes back to us doesn't make more sense to do maybe 2 weeks in the summer.
Yeah.
So it's a moving game. The fact that we now have those months, those weeks in those months is a win. But I get it. I think
No
that-
doubt. And,
yeah.
and the fact of the matter was, and it's through no fault of anyone here or before here, but in years past, they weren't diverted the way they should have been diverted. So that's very, very important. But again, I do think if there's a way we can just maybe add 1 week in July, 1 week in August,
Certainly
we can
noted.
solve
Yep.
this.
Yep.
Secondly, I've been working for years on the curbside composting. I know that we've started the very successful Project Oscar. I know that the mayor announced his Vision Zero press conference last week. Is curbside composting part of what the city's looking at? Do you guys have thoughts? I know it's expensive. I know Cambridge very successfully modeled it in one neighborhood before expanding it citywide. Any sort of thoughts?
So the zero waste RFP, which was released with the mayor's announcement of the zero waste program, will allow us to select a partner who can essentially dive into what are the things that are going to have the biggest impact in diverting stuff that's currently going into the trash side of the waste stream
Yep.
to have that either go to be recyclables or a compost. And obviously a big part of what goes into the trash waste stream right now are organics, whether that's yard waste or food. So this is certainly exactly the opportunity for us to take a look at how could something like curbside composting or something else, what would have the biggest impact for us as we think about our next round of trash and recycling contracts?
What's the cost right now for a ton of trash?
65
65. And how about recycling, a ton of recycling?
plus 2.
Plus 2.
So it is, we actually get $2, Rob, correct me if I'm off. We get $2 for every ton of recycling that we dispose of, and we pay
Why
$65.
I always say that every fiscal conservative ought to be an environmentalist as well, because it makes sense, absolutely. But that's very interesting, just how the number has fluctuated. When I started on this job, which wasn't all that long ago, the numbers were higher and lower in both ways, so it is a commodity. And then finally, Councilor McCarthy and I have talked about resurrecting the red shirt program. It wouldn't necessarily come under, were any of you guys red shirts?
I'm married to an alumni, yes. So, yeah.
Fantastic. You married up. I'm sure there's some alums in the audience as well, or parents of alums. I think that we have an opportunity to not only pair partnership and mentorship on the Parks Department, on DPW, but this is something that I know Tim and I are very much committed to bringing back, and I think it would be a great opportunity to bring young people, partner with our schools and you all to both offer kids young people, I don't use kids derisively, young people a great summer job, earn a little extra money and give back and serve their city in some capacity. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all.
Councilor Sabi George.
Thank you. And I just want to continue on just sort of extend the conversation about ComAv and that successful, I think, partnership between the city and state on that stretch. Is there something that we can explore for the American Legion Highway to do the same? And maybe you could talk a little bit about sort of the future of the American Legion Highway, which I know, I think there's some effort to change it to the American Legion Parkway.
So we've had a number of conversations with a very dedicated and committed group of residents who have a great vision for what the American Legion highway could become, including ways in which it can be traffic can be calmed, and it can really live up to kind of that notion of being a parkway. That is all part of the city's broader Green Links effort, which itself is part of the Livable Streets Emerald Network program. So as we look at what American Legion Highway could be, and you can see this in Go Boston 2030, we have a great interest in figuring out how do we make that corridor a way in which people are connecting to the great open spaces of our city and traveling from across multiple neighbors in our city in a way that is safe and really supporting the adjacent uses. Right now, we're sort of in the design side of that, so it's community conversations, and there's been we've engaged some class projects in what the American Legion Highway could look like, and that would be the precursor to any more intensive both design and then eventual capital investment.
Great. And then speaking of capital investment and sort of planning for the future, I want to talk a little bit about the Long Island Bridge, which I know has been a difficult conversation to have, but we continue to have this, there was a placeholder last year for 6.5 million. There's currently 6.7 million planned for capital improvements over the next 5 years. Can we talk a little bit about what our thinking is about these plans, and if we get to a point where rebuilding a bridge isn't appropriate, can we talk about that out loud a little bit?
So the current investment in the Long Island Bridge, and Para, you can certainly add to this, is really around the permitting and work associated with the previous Long Island Bridge. The design and program of the next Long Island Bridge is really part of the conversation of the programming of Long Island itself. We want to make sure that whatever investment and design that we do on the public works side supports the administration's broader efforts around Long Island. So the current conversations are really around the Long Island Bridge in the context of Long Island itself. And there's other folks who are really more engaged in the programming of Long Island, which would be again the precursor to the design of the Long Island Bridge.
Right. Save that for transportation next week. I'm good. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. All set? Okay. Well, once again, I just want to thank you for your time and talents, everybody on your team. Again, it's been said many times, the responsiveness from your A team up here to everybody in the field. We would just want to thank you. We have public testimony. Stacy Thompson and Wendy Landman, if you want to make your way down to the podium here.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Stacy Thompson, the Executive Director of Livable Streets Alliance, a member of the Vision Zero Coalition, and a City of Boston resident. I live in JP, and Matt is my rep. First, I just want to echo all the thanks. I frequently tell my advocates that while we're all obsessed with innovation, what actually makes a city run is maintenance, and that's thanks to the folks in this room. So we are deeply appreciative, and just want to give everyone who can't be here because they're literally picking up our trash and cleaning our streets right now, a thank you, as much as we may not all want to be at a meeting at 6 p.m. on a Monday night. And on that note, I would say from the Livable Streets perspective, just a couple of quick thoughts before I let my colleague Wendy get into some of the details. As someone who's still learning a lot about the city's budget process, it was, it's difficult for us to tell when we are increasing money or efforts or decreasing money or efforts because things change year to year. So any help that the council could do in helping the public better understand how the public works budget is changing would be extraordinarily helpful. And I would say specifically, we do know that there is additional funds for repainting crosswalks and some restriping, and we say thank you for that. That did come up. But overall, particularly as we look at Go Boston 2030, Vision Zero, even Climate Ready Boston, and the work that the city is already doing to change our infrastructure around sidewalks, increase bike lanes, I am concerned as I look at the overall budget that we just don't have enough people. And we know this when we look at the 311 logs, specifically around snow removal, that the bike infrastructure wasn't cleared out last year, that many sidewalks weren't cleared last year. And I'm curious how this budget addresses that concern, because right now it looks like we're keeping things roughly the same. And it's great to see that we have one more Bobcat coming. But there's, that's only going so far. And how are we going to make sure that we have enough people on the ground and Public Works is able to make sure that kids can walk to school after we've had an ice storm, that someone can get to a grocery store who maybe has a mobility issue. That's, how our city moves. So that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to let Wendy. And thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm Wendy Landman. I'm the Executive Director of Walk Boston and work with Stacy and many others in the Vision Zero Coalition and have been here before a few times talking with you. And I also want to echo the thank you to Public Works for all the work that you do both day and night. We know that the department never sleeps. And I want to echo what Stacy said. While the city has put an enormous amount of information online, which we really do appreciate, it is still extremely difficult to understand how the budget is changing from one year to the next. And again, to echo what Stacy said, there's so many changes afoot in a really good way, thinking about Vision Zero and other things, that it's really important for us to be able to follow them. So a couple things. One is it is clear that there is increased budget for paint, for marking crosswalks and lane markings. That's really important. There seems to be a reduction, and this is based on my reading of the budget, which is maybe not correct, but there seems to be a reduction in the budget for basic sidewalk reconstruction. although based on staff briefings, we think there may be an increase for something that's called heavy sidewalk maintenance. And what we'd like to understand is how those two things fit together. What does that mean overall for sidewalk conditions? If dollars are being shifted from one place to another, what's the end product going to be? Again, this actually contradicts something that Chris said, so maybe I read it wrong, but it seemed like there was a reduction in spending on street lighting. But again, maybe it's just a change in what's happening, and therefore having clarity in the budget would be really useful. And I really want to echo something that Stacy said as well, which is that we can't tell how sidewalks and curb ramps and crossing island snow clearance fares in the budget. We know that property owners are responsible for their sidewalks, but the places that we hear the most about are curb ramps and the islands where people are crossing. Sometimes sidewalks in front of the front of city properties, and then also the sweeping and clearance of cycle tracks and bike lanes. They're critical elements for for the work that Public Works does that affect the safety and security of people walking and people on bikes. So we would ask that even in this round, as the council is discussing this with the department, that these items be called out in the budget so we can tell what's happening, because it doesn't seem that there's an increase. And these are things that I think the city has been hearing about for a long time, and many of the places that we're talking about are not places that private property owners would be shoveling, or places on corners where the city's own plowing plows the curb ramps back in. So even if a resident or a business owner has shoveled their sidewalk, then the street plowing comes back and makes it impassable at the corners, and that's really doesn't do the job we need for people to be able to get around. Finally, and I think very importantly, we can't tell how the city is budgeting for finding and hiring a new public works director. We hope that the city is thinking that this is somebody who has really national expertise and really deep experience with all of the things you already do, but then all of the things that we're hoping will get better and better for walking and bicycling and transit use in the city. And again, looking at the budget, I couldn't figure out where that fit and how that was working, and is there a search firm that's being hired, and what is the process for that? Because I presume that will be included in next year's budget. So we look forward to working with all of you guys, of course, and the city council to make sure that all these questions we have and work that needs to be done has a place in the city's budget. So thanks very much.
Great, thank you very much. And I saw everybody feverishly taking notes. Those are great questions that maybe you could make them available to us, and we can pass them along if you want to make sure we get your information. Great. Anybody else have anything else? Closing remarks? Well, it's not going to snow anymore. And
Calling it.
just to piggyback off the snow plowing, and I saw this. I was out there, out by the Jackson Man School, and I know Public Works was out there clearing crosswalks. And again, it's first things first, the streets, and then I know you had a lot of personnel near the senior centers, the schools, the elderly housing, and I know those are priorities. So I want to know that I know you're making the effort, and maybe we do need more money, but we'll take that under advisement, and if you could provide us with those answers, that would be great. Thank you. Just want to thank everybody in the gallery here, and again, everybody on the streets tonight. Thank you for all your hard work, and this hearing stands adjourned.